Hi. So a few months ago, the next Battlefield got revealed, sort of. There were a few images and they talked about the future of the franchise, and about a week ago, there was a trailer for Battlefield Labs that showed gameplay of the next Battlefield, which is sort of exciting if you're a fan. Last game was so bad, the franchise can't really get any worse, so any news is sort of uplifting in a way. When the consumer understands their power, mainly they don't have to buy the fucking product, it forces change, and there's a lot of listening ears when a game is on its last legs. The result of that is this angle they're taking now, and I quote, a very serious commitment to player feedback, like saying, yes honey, I won't drop this one. History repeats itself. Take Modern Warfare 2019. Call of Duty was on its last legs, the franchise was a joke, and suddenly everything changed and they were getting exactly what they wanted. And besides being a somewhat good game, this game shifted Call of Duty into this weird new ecosystem of games, and it did that somewhat well. Suddenly Warzone is the biggest battle royale and it was making bank. Faith in the franchise was restored, Call of Duty split between Warzone and multiplayer, sort of. And because there was now a demand for it, the algorithm pushed the new generation of content creators, therefore sort of extending its life cycle. Now with that, I'm not saying EA wanted a battle royale, they already had Apex and that was already huge. It was the split that's important. Call of Duty successfully captured a new market in the multiplayer space under the Call of Duty brand, and that's important because there's only so big a video game can get without being held back by people generally being uninterested in that kind of gameplay. You can increase the budget, especially now that gaming is like insanely big, but at some point you'll have diminishing returns because you can't just market people into a good time if they don't like that kind of gameplay, and even worse if they're tired of that kind of gameplay. Diminishing returns become a really big deal. How do you still expand the brand after that? Well, offer more than some shitty team deathmatch variations and a laughably bad ranked mode. With all that said, a new game mode type thing was definitely coming for 2042. EA is gonna make sure, but they don't have to make it a battle royale and compete with themselves. Again, Apex was huge. That explains why Hazard Zone was this weird extraction type game with battle royale elements. And guess what? The next Battlefield has ripple effect working on a new Battlefield experience. They also said they want a world of Battlefield that transcends one game. Again, it's the expansion of the franchise that's important, and that would be fine. Really, all these games have to do is be good. But now we get to my favorite part. 2042 was given 3 years of development time, which is a good amount of time for a game this size, but there's a few issues. The multiplayer landscape had changed a lot, and more importantly, it had become more profitable. In 2019, when this game starts development, Battlefield 5 releases and does worse than Battlefield 1. Now, the reason it did worse is because Battlefield 1 is a better game, but on top of that, there were many marketing failures and audience disinterest in Battlefield 5. Here's the thing though. EA could have seen that decrease as a sign that the consumer isn't looking for this kind of game anymore, and Battlefield was being left behind by the industry, understanding that change meant more monetization. So they start tweaking the Battlefield formula, and that's a problem. It's a really big problem because EA is tweaking the formula of a game they don't understand, but we'll move past that. Because again, all the game has to do technically is to be fun and it'll find its audience. You go look at Battlefield 2042 now and they have their shit audience now. Popular game mechanics at that time start being added and developed for years in the future, and aside from the obvious, there's another problem. From what I can tell, these change requests were very badly communicated between EA and DICE. Suddenly, DICE doesn't have a full picture of what EA wants. This will become important soon. Also important note, at some point Portal starts development. I think EA saw an opportunity to both evolve Battlefield and also house the old audience, seeing as the old games still have pretty massive fan bases. I'm not going to spend much time with Portal. It was another binder of ideas that slowed development. But so far far we have a few distinct parts of development. The new Battlefield body, which is like the main game, Portal, which is a sub-game inside the main game, Hazard Zone, which is its own game mode outside of the main game, and a very unclear template of what EA wants from this game. Again, bad communication. Suddenly that 3-year time starts looking a little rough, but it gets worse. One thing I failed to mention so far is the state of DICE. EA's agenda of changing Battlefield is something EA has pushed for years. In fact, it's sort of something that held back Battlefield for a long time. EA is a business and they're constantly trying to sway the consumer. How do you guarantee people be interested in a new product? Well, develop on success stories around the market. Look at Titanfall 2, a game that straight up innovated the multiplayer movement shooter type of game. What's the game that Respawn worked on next? Apex Legends. So what do you think happened when DICE employees, whoever was there at that time, went to EA concerned that forcing whatever is popular for shooters onto Battlefield wasn't allowing the game to be as big as it could be? Well, I hope you're not fucking stupid, because it's not that hard. They were straight up fired. When 2042 started development, most of DICE was hired after Battlefield 1, and for a large number of them, 2042 was to be their first Battlefield game. This is basically a new studio, and because DICE had created the Frostbite engine, these employees had to be taught how to use it, which apparently took a lot of development time. Suddenly, they have way less time. They have to replicate the game, and they also have to make room for the changes EA wants to the main body of the Battlefield game. Changes that they don't know how to apply because like they haven't worked on Battlefield before. Because guess what? Maybe a character system would have worked. In fact, much of the community was excited when it was announced. It was the application that was dog shit. At this point, 2042 comes out, and of course it's a disaster. But that's the thing. DICE has always had a bad reputation with launches. Both 3 and 4 were basically unplayable when they came out. But this game was broken in places that made you question if these people have ever played video games. No all chat was a criminal decision. God forbid players want to communicate in a multiplayer game. There was no scoreboard. The character system was absolute shit. The lack of guns and variety. The menus, oh my god, the menus that are still dog shit to this day. And I don't know who the fuck thought drowning this game in cyan blue was a good idea. That's rhetorical. But if you had to guess whose idea it was to remove all chat to reduce bullying, would you say EA or DICE? Look, the reason I formatted the script like this is to show you patterns before I ask you something. What claim to Battlefield does the fan base still have besides the name associated? When the people making it were all fired, when the game changed in a direction nobody wants, when the community turned on it, when the market is trying to tackle is largely hated for being scummy. And worst of all, we're still stuck with EA, something nobody ever liked. And that's the thing, I actually think the next game is going to be really good. We talked about it earlier, there's a pattern that the game is at least going to be playable. And guess what? People learn. The new developers are probably going to nail it because they've spent years with the game now. They know what they're doing. But it doesn't matter. In an astounding turn of events, the quality of the product matters less if you've insulted your audience. What I find most astounding about this is how big gaming has gotten now. It's actually sort of crazy. Think about it. These companies work through budgets. So the market around multiplayer games is so big, it caused a budget increase in this department of EA's profits. And they understood the potential from, and I quote, a world of Battlefield, especially when the brand is already a very recognizable name. They will pursue taking more of the market with more than one game, and they need a stable backbone. That's why the new Battlefield is probably going to be really good. In fact, I think it's going to be the most Battlefield game they can make. Literally but in 2025. So in hindsight, something like firing most of the staff isn't that bad when you're basically starting a new chapter and expanding. This is what the new AAA companies look like, and I think that's why there's been so many AAA failures lately. The companies are a lot more involved, meaning to get a good game, developers have more hoops to jump through, and in the spirit of monetizing everything, they monetize everything. The games end up being somewhat empty and bland because there's nothing cool to work towards, and they're heavily targeted at the casual audience with these like meme stuff that they add for the sake of attention and marketing, like a gun that's a dragon, a possible pedophile, or a drawing with tits. But ultimately people stop playing after a month because of a lack of content. AAA multiplayer games are empty tables you buy to have somewhere to place the toys that you have to buy from them, and that's the fun of it. And as someone who spent his life being broke, all I see is empty tables. And when I realized this, it sort of ruined this part of gaming for me. Hours of work for a badge or a spray or a camo gun really isn't fun, but if you don't have a goal, there's nothing to work towards and the game is empty. And it's double less fun when the graph shows a positive correlation between time in game and money spent. When the content of the game is less than the content of the market is the game and the game is the marketing. Also, there definitely won't be a bipod knife in the new one, so fuck that game. Before I finish this video, I have one piece of info that might make you a little less sad. When there's a hole in the market, it's basically inevitable that somebody doesn't fill it. And the way the dominoes have been placed, in my opinion, is the perfect playground for return of a player that's been missing for years in the multiplayer space, which is the AA game. So hey, there's that. The question of do we want another Battlefield game ultimately means nothing. There's going to be one, and I'm going to play it. Sadly, this is the kind of game I fuck with. We can just hope that the next one is at least 70 hours worth of fun. Because the last one sure as fuck wasn't.